So let's do it. So I have Jenni here, and I'm going to let Jenni do a little introduction, and then I have some questions about creative ruts.
All right. Hey, everyone. I'm Jenni Grover. I'm a wellness coach for quilters. I am a former president of the Chicago Modern Quilt Guild and been quilting for about 8 years now.
Awesome. Okay, so Jenni and I have just been talking for the last half hour, but since I can't put this whole half hour chat into the into this presentation, I have some very specific questions about basically the timeline of like the first creative rut to like getting creative ruts under your belt and how she feels about them today. So I'm just going to start, Jenni, with our first question, which is for your very first creative rut or your early creative ruts.
Mhm.
What did you think was happening when it first hit?
Oh, so the first time I remember having a really big creative rut, I was writing a book. This was a little bit before I was a quilter, but I've been a writer my whole life. I was writing a book and I got just stagnant. I could not push it through. And I felt like a failure. I felt like I clearly didn't have enough drive, and I clearly didn't have enough expertise, and I clearly didn't have enough creativity. So obviously it was all me and I was a complete failure. And then it felt like every other thing I wanted to do was also going to fail. So then it made me feel like, well, why bother do anything? Why bother getting dressed? Why bother making your house look cute? Like all that stuff. I mean, I truly thought I was like leeching all my creativity. And I think what was really happening was there were lots of external things that were affecting my creativity. I was right at the nadir of the Great Recession, and I was getting divorced. And so I was single for the first time in a very long time. And I was terrified about what I was going to do for money because I was a freelancer and no one was hiring me. So I thought that everything was a failure and that it was all me. And I was forgetting that there are all these external factors that affect our creativity.
Mm. Did you think were you worried that your creativity had up and gone for good? Like that was it?
Oh, yeah, for sure. Yeah, I thought, well, I've been a writer my whole life. I have this book in my head. I've had it in my head for years. If I can't get this done, I obviously I've lost it. I've lost my touch. I don't have the ability. And it was being like reinforced by freelance clients who would then like cancel the contract. And they weren't canceling because they didn't like me. They were canceling because nobody had money because the whole economy had crashed. But I took it all like really personally. So it really was one of the lowest points of my life. And I had been creative my whole life. I've made jewelry and I've painted and I've gardened and I cook and I make clothes and I do all this stuff but because I couldn't get that book where I wanted it to be, I decided that meant everything else was just done.
Mm. I mean, I'm like kind of over here chuckling because I feel you.
Yeah.
And, oh boy, that sounds bad.
Well,
Like I should.
hopefully you'll feel me where I get to where I am today, which is a different state of mind.
Right. So, I mean, let's ask the second question. Do you remember how you got through it?
Mm. Well, one thing I've learned is that creative wellness is just like one piece of the puzzle. For me, like paying attention to my physical wellness, my mental wellness, my spiritual wellness, and my social wellness are also really important. And so there were a few things that really like got the momentum going again. And one of those things was I started taking a little bit better care of my body. I've had chronic illness and chronic pain since I was 25. And so I knew how I needed to take care of my body, but I was really just like slacking. And well, slacking sounds really self-critical. That's not, I wasn't doing the best that I could do. So I really ramped that up. I leaned into my spiritual path, which is Buddhism. So I brought more meditation into the equation, which was really hard to sit with your thoughts when you're thinking so self-critically, difficult. Community, like I started talking more vulnerably to people about what was going on. And that really helped because then they were all echoing what I was saying, like they were feeling it too. So then I didn't feel so alone with it.
Mm.
Therapy, a lot of therapy, Tara. A lot of time spent talking with an expert that helped remind me about all the different perspectives. Like I had one perspective that was, I suck, I'm the worst, I'm a total failure, I'm obviously not trying hard enough, I'm never going to have it again. And it's like, well, that's only one perspective and she kind of sucks. Like, what about what about a kinder perspective that says you're going through a really hard time for like 5 different reasons? You know, it's not unlike how we have felt during the pandemic, a lot of us, right? Like there were all these outside pressures.
Yeah. Did you, as we get close to wrapping this up, I do want to ask though this question because it's when you've kind of started seeing like, okay, these are the steps that I need to take to get my creativity back. How was the reentry? Like, was writing stilted? Was it, you know, did it flow? Like, how did that go? What did that look like?
Oh, I would say it was rough going in. I mean, it was because, you know, like your self-confidence is lagging. And for me, like I hadn't even really like sat down at the computer I mean, I was like afraid to touch my computer, you know, and yeah, it was super awkward. And, but like Anne Lamott in her book on writing, she talks about how you just kind of have to barf out a first draft. So like, I was like, that's it. I'm just going to let it pour out of me and be absolute garbage. And it turns out it wasn't absolute garbage. I was able to work with it, you know? So I think the same holds true with quilting is like, sometimes you just have to mess around and not be afraid to cut up fabric and have to throw it away or compost it or whatever. Like you just have to kind of let yourself be bad and before you can be good, you know?
Yeah, that permission frees
Yeah.
you, right? So
Oh,
you're
yeah.
like, I'm just gonna write garbage. And then that's easy. We can all just write garbage. But
Oh,
then it
yeah.
turns out it wasn't garbage because
Yeah.
yeah, that permission.
It was like 80% garbage, 20%, you know, good stuff. But it was a start.
And I love that. I wish we could do this interview for so much longer. But for my last question, I want to say, what do you think about creative ruts when they hit you now? Like, what's your initial reaction, and what are the steps that you take?
Yeah, that's a great question. So now I am like much more in a place of acceptance about it. And acceptance, I don't mean like I accept it and I'm resigned to it. And it's like I accept that the creative ruts, the ebb and flow is natural. Life happens, hormones happen, financial things happen, you know, color trends happen. Like there's all these things that affect our creativity, and it's just part of the flow. And so you know, for a while, I haven't sewn for a couple of months because I was really thinking a lot about my work and focusing on that, but I've been missing it. So I got on Zoom last night with some friends and sewed for a while, and it's like it just lit me up again. I just needed that community connection to remind me like, yeah, this is a thing that I do, that I'm comfortable with, that I love. And so it's like I know now the toolkit that I need to use to get back into the flow. So I know that community is part of it. I know that my spiritual practice is part of it. I know I need to feel good physically as much as I can. I know I need to keep going to therapy and I need to keep working on my mental state, and those all. So what happens is when we continually work on those, it really builds up like a scaffolding, like a support system, so that when we have a rut, instead of falling all the way down the well, we kind of go boop like this, and then we say, okay, well, my creativity is off, but so let me see, can I drink more water today? Can I call a friend? Can I go to a museum to get inspiration? Like you have a kind of path to get out of it faster.
I love that. I love that. Yeah, it's like you wear a rut down in the road of support, so you can just keep walking that road back on up. Yeah,
That's right.
that's habits for you, right?
Yeah.
That's amazing. Oh, Jenny, I loved talking with you today, and I really appreciate your time. So to finish it off for everyone, I want you them to be able to find you or find resources. And I feel like you have so much to offer. So why don't you let everyone know where they can find you
Yeah,
best?
thank you so much. So you can go to my website, which is jennigrover.com, and that's Jenny with an I. And I've got some free resources there. At that site, you can also send me a note if you want to talk about coaching, if you want to talk about collaborating, that's great. And you can find me on Instagram at hyper.scrappy. So
Awesome.
that's, um,
Thanks.
thank
Thank
you. So happy to be here
you.
with y'all.